Hi guys, today we are doing an unbiased gear review. This is Bond number 25, the Cyclone F8, affectionately known as Frankenstein. So let's go over the specs of the instrument. First of all, as you can see, there is a ton of woodwork here. We've got a mostly ambrosia maple body, a nice little stripe of quilted maple that's running through the entire thickness of the body. In there, we've also got a 1/4 inch thick ply of bubinga, and on the top, we have a patchwork top comprising of what Bond's website describes as 16 different pieces of wood, of which you can kind of pick out a few of them. We've got some redwood burl, some flame maple, what looks to be buckeye burl, spalted maple. Looks like we've got some wenge here. We've also got Pale Moon Ebony. There's a bunch of other stuff that's flowing in here too that for whatever reason I just can't pick out. A lot of different stuff involved in this patchwork top. We also have a 3-piece wenge and flame maple neck, and on top of that we've got an ironwood fretboard with cocobolo binding. We've also got luminlay side dots here, and we have 27 frets. As far as the hardware goes, the hardware comes from Strandberg, and we have 2 EMG pickups, an 808 and an 808X, as well as a master volume, master tone 3-way toggle switch, and a kill switch. It should be noted that previously there were 2 other switches here, one for series parallel and the other one for coil split, and I will tell you what happened with those later. Finally, we also have a Neutrik jack, so that you have to hit the button in order to get the jack out, making it a little bit more of a secure connection. So now there are a lot of things going on with this guitar, especially with regards to the woodwork. That being said, the woodwork is one of the, I would say, the main areas of opportunity that came with this instrument. Although it looks pretty, although it's really nicely put together, although this guitar was a nice little exercise in how many pieces of tone wood can you put together to make this thing sound the way that it does come off a little bit lacking in certain areas. For starters, and probably the most prominent area of opportunity, this is something that I think is real super basic luthier stuff that was just a miss on this guitar. If you can see it here, and if not, then I will add a picture when I edit this, but the high E string is coming pretty much right up to the edge of the fretboard here on the higher frets. That does make solo playing a bit of a hindrance. The high E string does tend to pop off the side a little bit. It is something that you can get used to. I mean, you guys saw the song that I did at the beginning of the video. That is 100% done on this guitar. I did want to keep the integrity of this video and doing the whole thing just strictly on this one instrument, but it took a lot of practice and a lot of kind of getting used to the way that high E string is in order for me to be able to pull that off. In addition to that, there are some rough fret edges that exist on this instrument. It's one of those things that bothers me, especially about custom luthiers like this, that they invest a lot of time and effort into building such what should have been a magnificent instrument, and then to have that be just a really, really obvious miss. It's not like super prevalent, but you can definitely tell that there's some roughness here, especially on like the bass side, kind of around here, but for the most part, that's really it. The frets themselves are not bad. They're kind of a really, really, really low fret height, so I can only assume that these are like maybe mediums or something even lower than that as far as the fret wire goes. Looking at a few of the frets, it looks like some of them are maybe sitting a little weird, like maybe rocking back and forth a little bit. They're not actually rocking back and forth, they're just not sitting flush up against the board. There again, super basic luthier stuff that should not be happening. Some other craftsmanship issues that come up when you further inspect this instrument, looking at where one of the three-way toggle switches was, there is definitely some cracking in the wood there. Now this happened when this guitar was still in the builder's possession when he originally built the instrument, which means that he had ample opportunity to try to fix it, try to come up with a solution, and he did not. His solution was to essentially finish over it. Does it look unsightly? Yes. If this was a guitar that I was taking on the road, I probably wouldn't care so much because I know this thing is going to get banged up anyway. But for something where this was what I consider a white whale guitar, this was something that I was after for a while. This was something that, oh my God, if this was to come up for sale, I'm going to snatch it up. That's a little heartbreaking to know that this already had damage on it right from the moment it was built in the first place. Had I known that, had I noticed that, might not have pulled the trigger. In addition to that, we also have some issues with the finishing. Along the sides of the guitar, it looks like when this instrument was originally being finished, the finish was allowed to drip a little bit. So there's a bit of excessive finishing here. And in addition to that, it was never sanded down. It was never buffed out. It's just a nice little raised ridge right there. There again, is it something where I would necessarily care if I was taking this sucker on the road? No. But being that I was looking for an instrument to play quite a bit here at home, do a lot of recording with, and this was one of those rare instruments that I was after for a while. That is extremely heartbreaking to know that the luthier did not take that kind of care with his instrument. One of the things that gets noticed up here at the top is the locking clamp behind the nut that is provided by Strandberg hardware. A lot of people are like, okay, why is it split? Why is the string pull the way that it is? And it does serve a function. For those of you that remember my video where I did Chad's Egenbergs, there was a super obvious problem with regards to the truss rod in that you couldn't really access it because there was a screw that was going right down through the middle of the truss rod cavity. Whereas with this, I think what they intended to do was avoid that problem altogether, so they split up the hardware up at the top so that you have adequate access to the truss rod. So that does serve an actual purpose, and a few points on their side, that is some good thinking to recognize that that could have been a problem and to have done something about it. Moving on to the electronics, one of the things that bothered me about this guitar when I received it is that the previous owner had replaced the original EMG 808 and 808X with a set of lace alumitones. Those of you that have seen some of my videos, you know how I feel about those pickups. They're very shrill, they're very bright, and to put them in a guitar that has a ton of maple on it, also some ebony flowing around, etc., makes for possibly an even brighter, even more shrill instrument. And yep, when I played it, didn't like it, didn't care for it. So I took the instrument to a competent luthier who agreed to put back in the original pickups. However, we noticed a problem when we came up to the wiring scheme. Now, the original wiring that Bond had listed on their website and on their Facebook page was that there was 3 mini switches here. You had the volume, you had the tone, you had the 3-way toggle switch to go between the pickups, but you also had these 3 mini toggles, one of which was a kill switch we were able to still keep. The other 2 a series parallel split, and a coil split. Here's the problem with that. These are EMG 808 and 808X. They are not capable of being wired that way. And we went back and forth with an EMG tech on this for a few weeks. This is the way that it originally was wired. Why can't we do it this way? And the guy was very insistent. He's like, I know that's what the luthier says, but there's no way that that could have happened. There's just no way that you can wire these pickups series parallel and coil split. Now, granted, maybe there's some sort of electronics, like sleight of hand that can be done, like, oh, if I put in this or if I put in that, it creates an effect like that. But I've certainly never heard of that. And I'm a little bit too lazy to Google it to see if such a thing exists. So we're just going with what the EMG tech told us, which is that the way that the luthier, Bond, said that this was wired cannot happen. Now, as far as the instrument sounds, that is one area where honestly I think the guitar kind of excels in. You do have a lot of very bright wood on this instrument, which you would normally think would lend this thing to being a super bright instrument. However, because there's a lot of presence of other woods that are typically very dark or very warm sounding, such as the wenge that's in the neck, and also that layer of bubinga that separates the top from the body, that tends to lend this thing to having a really more balanced tone, but erring on the side of the brightness, which, being that this is an extended range guitar, is not necessarily a bad thing. You play a little bit of riffage on it, and the low notes tend to ring out nice and clear. There's a nice kind of bell sound when you hit that open note, especially on that low F. So, a few points on the guitar side. It sounds really, really awesome. Even the neck pickup, being that it's an EMG, you would think, okay, it's going to have tons of the compression and it's going to sound a little sterile. It actually does still sound really good in this instrument. It's not bad at all. Granted, yes, there's some definite craftsmanship issues with this thing. But at least it sounds good. At least it sounds usable, if not outright awesome. Which, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It does sound outright awesome. Me not necessarily being an EMG fan, this thing sounds pretty good for having EMGs in it. So there it is. There you go. This is Bond number 25. Would I say it's a keeper? Hell no. And that's why I'm actually selling it right now. If anyone's interested, hit me up through the channel. Hit me up on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/ArnoldPlaysGuitar. Maybe we can work something out. Maybe I can get this instrument into your hands. That being said, it's an inspiring instrument. It's cool to play on it. It just has enough workmanship and craftsmanship issues that I can't bear to keep it. So, and the fact that I didn't know about these issues at the time that I purchased it left a little bit less than pleasurable taste in my mouth. What does leave a good taste in my mouth, though, is this beer that I'm having. This is from Tiranina Brewers, which is in Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Brewers Gone Wild. This is the Devil Made Me Do It Coffee Imperial Oatmeal Porter. Which honestly tastes just like an Imperial coffee oatmeal porter should. It does have those hints of the coffee and the oatmeal. It does have a bit more of an ABV to it than you would typically find because it's an Imperial, and it does have a nice dark rich flavor to it. I rather enjoy this. I'm glad I have more. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully the next instrument will be a little bit better, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, hit me up in the comment section below. Like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you around. Thank you.